Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we got a couple of different topics to go over, but first off I want to talk about an announcement, and this is from the UAP Disclosure Fund. They're going to be holding a virtual town hall on Thursday, January 9th between 2 o'clock and 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And the virtual town hall is going to be a policy for public safety professionals in the era of mystery drones. And we'll go over what they're going to be talking about here and who's going to be participating. Actually, Dr. Keith Taylor alerted me to this. Thank you, Keith. Basically, this says here, according to the release, it says virtual town hall policy for public safety professionals in the era of mystery drones. It's going to be a Zoom video conference, and you could register. You have to register if you want to be a part of it. You could register, and I'll leave the link for the place where you register in the description. It says, recent mysterious drone incursions over United States cities and municipalities have highlighted the need for more robust policies to address how public safety officials should respond to incidents involving unknown drone technologies and other unidentified sightings. The UAP Disclosure Fund will host a virtual panel discussion by leading experts to discuss the subject. Specific policy recommendations will be shared, along with the establishment of a new working group to coordinate additional efforts in the future. Attendance of this webinar is open to all law enforcement and first responders. The discussion will cover topics such as a historical overview, which will be a brief summary of similar incursions that provide context for the current wave of sightings, procedures, developing standardized protocols, comprehensive training, interagency coordination, effective communication, evidence collection, and psychological support to effectively and sensitively respond to unknown drone incidents. Training, implementing formal response training for law enforcement and emergency responders, including specific policy recommendations for such training, and also equipment, understanding the equipment required for detection, characterization, and evaluation of unknown drones. The roundtable discussion will be followed by a Q&A session. Attendees will be welcome to submit questions. And as Keith Taylor pointed out, somebody had asked him if it's open to everyone, not just first responders. So even if you're not a first responder, it's still open to you. You can still check it out. And I would highly recommend it if you're interested in this. I know a lot of people are interested in the drones right now because of the situation that's been ongoing over the last few months here, particularly the New Jersey events, which are still ongoing. By the way, we still have no answers from the government. But, first responders, police departments, they need to come up with a game plan, and I guess this is what this is all about. Some of the people that's speaking at this thing will include Sean Grosvenor. He's going to be the moderator. He's a forensic consultant, retired from the Illinois State Police. So he'll be there moderating this. Richard Lang, who I had on the show before, he's a FAA licensed commercial pilot with a multi-engine rating and a Bachelor of Science degree in aeronautics from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida. And actually, he wrote a book, which I talked about on this channel, A First Responder's Guide to UFO Encounters. That was a very interesting book, particularly when it comes to this subject. It's actually trying to, come up with policies and procedures for first responders when it comes to UAP reports and encounters and what are first responders supposed to do. The federal government really never has helped out with this, so I guess first responders are on their own, so they got to come up with their own policies and procedures. And that's what this discussion is going to be about. So again, it's going to be something that should be of great interest, and I will most certainly be talking about it. Also, Chris Grooms, he's a former police chief of Valley County, Nebraska. During his tenure, Chief Grooms' department responded to multiple and ongoing incidents involving unknown drones. And also Jerry and John Tedesco, they're the founders of Nightcrawler Research, an investigative organization dedicated to exploring UAP, known for their methodical and science-based approach. The Tedescos have been featured in documentaries, podcasts, and academic discussions, establishing them as leaders in the field of investigative research. So they will be there on hand too for this event. So if you're interested, again, I will leave the link where you could register, and you could check that out. It's going to be on Thursday from 2 p.m. to 3:30 Eastern Time. And it's something that's being put out there by the UAP Disclosure Fund. Okay, moving on. I want to talk about a little bit about what happened. I got a response, a lot of responses actually. I want to say thank you for all the comments that people have given me for the last episode, and I actually have also received some emails with regards to that episode. And in that episode, I was talking about some encounters that people have submitted their experiences to me in emails, and I talked about those, and then I actually talked about the encounter that I had when I was a kid, when I was almost 9 years old, when that creature with the 3 fingers was in the bedroom. I went over that in the previous show. Well, I received a really interesting email today from a woman named Natalie, and this is what she has to say. She had something very similar and something very strange that happened to her that she saw with her own eyes, and she thinks that maybe it's similar to what happened to me when I was a kid, but this is in more recent years. Anyway, this is what she writes. She says, I just had to email you after listening to your most recent podcast, Alien Bedroom Encounters. I always listen to your podcast whilst I'm working, and I had to physically stop what I was doing when I heard your experience, as it literally made me gasp, as it matched so closely to an event I had. I've been listening for a while and heard you reference your story, but never heard the actual event until today. I can honestly say 100% I believe what you saw, and when you said you were a kid around 8, it sent a shiver down my spine as I had a relatable experience. In April 2023, my daughter came into bed with me. She would have been around 7. We just got a new mattress, so she wanted to test it out. She was making some bad dream noises, so I turned over to comfort her. As I turned over, I could see movement as if someone was standing over her, moving their arms back and forth, like they were doing some voodoo over her or like casting a spell. I don't know how to better explain it. I thought, what the hell? Clearly not. Blinked and rubbed my eyes, and I could still see a shadow moving around that side of the bed. I thought it must be some trick of the light. Looked around the room, couldn't see anything. Turned back over, closed my eyes, and thought about it for a few minutes. I turned back over to face my daughter and looked again, expecting it to be gone, but it wasn't. It was there, moving its hands over where she laid in bed, not physically touching, but about 15 centimeters between her and its hands. I wasn't scared at the time because I honestly couldn't believe what I was seeing. I regrettably just sat there, watched, and tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Eventually I stood up, got my camera light on, and went to the bathroom, came back down and sat back in bed, and it was gone. Ever since, I hate myself for not doing something to try to protect her, and I try to forget about it. I just honestly couldn't believe what my eyes were seeing, and my brain was just trying to think of everything rational it could be. I told close family members, but I get the impression they think I was lucid dreaming, but I know for sure I wasn't. It was 4 to 5 a.m., and I didn't even get back to sleep after it. Description-wise, it was literally just a pitch black shadow. The room was dark, but it was darker than anything else in the room, and it also looked like it had a hat-like thing on. I couldn't make out the ends of its hands, but they were definitely moving over her. I wanted to share this with you as it was so similar to yours, especially of her being of similar age to you when it happened and with the hands moving. It makes you wonder if it is NHI, what are they doing to our children / us? Regards, Natalie. Thank you very much, Natalie, for sending me that, because that is very interesting and very scary. And I don't know, I know some people might be out there and say, well, how could she leave the room? But, she obviously was upset about it herself. But I don't think, when you're in a situation like this, when these kind of weird things happen, you might do some weird things you wouldn't think you would do. I mean, maybe she, at the time, she obviously stated she couldn't believe what she was seeing. That's what it was. I mean, she couldn't believe what was happening, and she couldn't believe it. But she knows now, looking back, that it was something that was real, and there was something there hovering over her bed, very shadowy like, and she couldn't see what the hands looked like, whether it had 3 digits or not, like those thing that I saw. But that's what it was like for me. It was like ritualistically. It was just like, well, that hand was just moving close to my face and then further away, close to my face and further away. It just never stopped doing that, and for that whole 20 minutes that I endured. And this sounds like it might have been something that's similar, but in this case, there was a witness. I had no witnesses. At least, actually, in fact, I guess in a way you could say there were no witnesses in this case, because the little girl, obviously, she didn't know what was going on. The mother is the only one who saw this, Natalie. But again, what is going on? I mean, if say this is the same kind of situation, almost the same exact routine, it sounds like to me. I don't know. Could be. Maybe that's how they do this. Maybe that's something that they. I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. I have no explanation for what happened to me other than it had to be some sort of non-human intelligence. There was some sort of intelligence in the room that night based on what I saw through the blanket and that unearthly sound that never gave up the entire episode. Now, Natalie doesn't say anything about this a sound here, but it sounds similar to what happened with me. We don't know for sure. I mean, who knows? Maybe it was a different kind of alien doing this. Who knows? We really don't know. All we can do is, we hear these stories, and there's not much you can do after you hear them. I mean, it's fun to talk about them, but when you have so many stories like this, they just keep piling up. You have to say to yourself, well, obviously something's going on here. All these people wouldn't be having these experiences if they really weren't happening. Obviously something's going on. I know that for a fact because I had it actually happen to me. So I personally know that, but that's all I could do is tell the story, and people could take it or leave it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. But what I really want to talk about today is, the idea that some people get. It sounds like one of the stories I was talking about yesterday. The one woman said that she was getting a shot in the head, what she perceived to be an injection of some sort, which would conquer out by these creatures. You don't usually hear that much. I mean, you do hear it. People get marks on them, right? They get, but nobody ever really talks about what's causing people to conk out and not remember anything. I mean, there could be multiple factors actually. I don't know. Is it something that they give you, like in an injection? Is it something that they're doing to us, through, I don't know, some sort of telepathy or some sort of suggestion, hypnotic suggestions? I don't know. We just don't know. But it could be a combination of things. Maybe it's the shock of it. Maybe our brains, when these things happen, people forget about their abductions because their brain, they can't handle it, so their brain just blocks it off as a protection so they don't lose their sanity. It could be something like that. All of these things could be at play. We just don't know. But what I did mention yesterday that the case involving the Pascagoula incident involving Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker, they found marks on them, and that was talked about in this book, this recent book from recent years. This was just published a few years ago, Beyond Reasonable Doubt, by Philip Mantle and Irina McCammon Scott, PhD. And this was probably the first time that I read about that. I don't remember reading about the marks on these two gentlemen until I read it in this book. And I just want to talk about that for a second. In chapter 11, which is on page 316, if you have a copy of this book, if you don't have a copy, I highly recommend it. It is one of the best, most detailed, most excellently researched books about an alien encounter you will ever read in your life. I got to say that. Hats off to the authors for this one, because this is fantastic stuff. But they talk about the puncture wounds, document and photographs, and there were photographs in this book too of both men. Charles Hickson had marks on his arm, multiple marks, and Calvin Parker had marks on his foot, like injection marks, and that's what they stated that they believed that they were injected by something which calmed them down, by these aliens, these weird looking aliens that, these two guys went fishing on the Pascagoula River after work one night. And then the next thing you know, some sort of a craft shows up, just hovering off the ground right behind them. And the next thing you know, there's these three weird floating robot-like beings that come out, grab them, and they're scared out of their minds. But the second that one of them touches Calvin Parker here, he recalled that all of a sudden he felt calm and relaxed, like he wasn't as scared as he was when the event initially occurred. But they actually received, there was a document here. There was what the authors of this book are calling the smoking gun document, which they were interviewed within 72 hours. They were interviewed by Dr. James Harter and also J. Allen Hynek, and they did a report. There was a report that they put together on the puncture marks that were on the two gentlemen. And here's what the report says. It's approximately 72 hours after Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker had been abducted into a strange glowing object for humanoid-type beings. Certain markings were found on their bodies of which both men could not account for their presence when questioned about them. At the time of questioning these two men, both still showed signs of being in a mild state of shock. Both men's pupils showed signs of being dilated, and the reaction to light by the pupils were very slow in relation to what they should have been, suggesting that their eyes had been affected by the artificial intense lighting inside the craft. During this period of interrogation by me, I found that both men were questioned on certain topics, were apprehensive about answering, suggesting that both of them had been given a post-hypnotic command not to answer certain questions, or that they were indeed scared to answer certain questions for some unknown fear. Their reaction time to certain stimuli response activities was also very slow. 3 puncture-type marks were noted on Charles Hickson's left arm as indicated in the photos that were taken in his home that night by me in the presence of his wife and son-in-law and the son-in-law's wife and Calvin Parker. A close examination revealed that the epidermis had been penetrated as if by a needle-like device in several different areas on the left arm. At the same time, certain sections of the epidermis had been removed in circular fashion, although very small sections which could have only been observed by a close inspection. The rest of Charles Hickson's body was also inspected, except for the genital region, of which he was questioned about in privacy. No other marks or rashes were noted. Calvin Parker's body was also carefully inspected, except for the genital region, of which he was also questioned in privacy. Puncture-type marks of the same fashion were noted on the inside of his left foot as indicated in the photos. No other marks or rashes were noted on the rest of his body, except for natural occurring blemishes and pimples. And then they had pictures here of the close-up of Charles Hickson's arm, and you could see it. You can see puncture marks, and also on Calvin Parker's foot. You see the puncture marks there. I highly recommend this book. It's fantastic. But I guess, that's a case where, it's possible that these two people, at the moment of abduction, they were given some sort of an injection. Usually you don't hear that in a lot of abduction cases. I mean, usually there's some sort of a procedure. Medical procedures occur usually on board where there's needles and all kinds of stuff getting, people end up with marks all the time. I mean, we hear about that all the time. But you have to wonder, are they using something? That's the question. These are all questions, outstanding questions we don't have the answers for. What are the aliens doing to make people calm down, to forget, and ultimately forget? What are they doing? Are they injecting something that doesn't show up later in any sort of analysis that we can conduct, that that human beings could do? I mean, I don't. It doesn't seem that way. We never really heard anything like that about any unknown substance inside the body of an abductee. But it does seem like it's something that does happen here sometimes, like in that case there, and in the case I was talking about yesterday, where a woman was. Said she was getting injected with something in her head, and then she said she had developed skin cancer in that area and had to have it removed. That's what she claims. So it seems like that, but here's the thing. What is happening? Is it beyond that, though? I mean, is there more to it than just the injection? Maybe the injection just to calm them down, to keep them docile while the aliens do whatever they want to do with you. But what do they do after that? How do they make people forget? I mean, is it a combination of the shock of the whole thing? I mean, if you were all of a sudden taken out of your environment and you're brought on board of some sort of an alien craft and you're forced to undergo some sort of procedure, I mean, is your brain going to block that out? Or is your brain going to block that out possibly? And are they going to do something also? I think that they're doing something also to block this out. And the proof of that is, you read a lot of different abduction stories, enough of them, you realize the aliens don't want you to remember this. They don't want you to remember that you were abducted. In fact, what was really interesting was in the Allagash case, which occurred in 1976, but it wasn't until over 10 years later when these four young men, I talk about the Allagash case a lot on here, on this show. I think it's one of the best cases ever. I mean, how could it not be? I mean, you had 4 young college friends go on this adventure in the Allagash wilderness in Maine back in 1976. They have this incredible UFO sighting while they're out night fishing on a boat. Next thing you know, they see the flying saucer. They're standing on the shore. One minute they're in the middle of the boat seeing this object coming close to them. The next minute they're standing on the shore and the object's going away and they're just standing there looking at it. They lost time. There was time that was lost. They didn't realize it at that time, but there was time lost. And then over 10 years later, when two of these people were having nightmares about it, then they realized there was something more to that trip than they could recall. They ended up getting hypnotized, all four of them, as we talk about a lot on here, and they all recalled a very similar situation where all four of them were abducted by these weird creatures, brought on board of this craft, and all of them underwent weird procedures that didn't make any sense to them. But what was interesting here is if you read after the case, when years later, right, years after this event, when they were getting hypnotized and they all were starting to realize, my God, this really did happen. Something we were abducted by aliens. One of there were two twin brothers, Jack and Jim Weiner. And Jack Weiner started having these weird dreams where these creatures would show up. A creature would show up and tell him not to tell anybody. They would appear in dreams where they didn't seem to belong in the dream. He was having a regular old dream, and all of a sudden the dream would get interrupted by one of these creatures showing up and telling him, hey, don't say nothing. Don't tell anyone. Keep it quiet. And this was a letter that Jack Weiner had sent to the writer of this book, Ray Fowler, back in January of 1990. He says, I was just working on a letter to you on a dream that I had on January 6th. It was it was really a strange dream. At first, I tried to put it aside and forget about it, but it was such a strange dream that it has been impossible to forget about it. The dream itself wasn't anything about UFOs, but 4 different times during this dream, a figure would just kind of emerge out of thin air in front of me and would come right up to me. It was exactly like the things that I recalled under hypnosis from the Allagash, except it had a long flowing garment that hid the rest of his body, and it had a hood. All I could see was its face. It kept repeating over and over again. It was like a message that was going into my mind or something. It's hard to verbalize, but it's really strange, Ray. It kept telling me not to tell, and it kept on saying, you will not tell. It is not the right time. And then it said that I should not harm myself by telling. The last thing it kept saying was, you will cooperate. And then after I get this message from it, it would just recede back into nothingness again, and it did this about 4 different times during the dream. It made me feel like I wanted to completely surrender to its wishes. You know, it was almost like, yeah, I can understand that. It made me feel, even in my dream, like I was weak in the knees. So there was some sort of effort ongoing by these creatures long after this abduction occurred in 1976. Well, apparently some of these guys were still getting abducted, as you know, even before that, and they found out later they were getting abducted before this event as well as after the event. But these aliens did not want these people to be telling their story about what happened to them. The aliens are very interested in secrecy. They don't want anyone to know that they're doing this. And otherwise, I mean, they would do it openly, right? I mean, obviously, they don't want us to know. Somehow they're doing something to try to keep these memories, to erase them, to make them, you know, obsolete from people's minds, right? I mean, for all I know, I had that experience when I was a kid. I also had the experience in 1994 when I saw the UFO up close and personal. And I also had another experience when I was living in Hawaii that was very strange, but I don't know if it was connected or not. It might have been. I just don't know. I talk about that one sometimes too. But those first 2 incidents, the creature and then later the craft, I mean, for all I know, I could have been dealing with these things my whole life, and the only memory I have are those 2 incidents. That's it. That could be the case, and that could be the case for a lot of people. These creatures have the ability to make you forget. And you have to wonder, though, is it just them that's doing it, or is it a combination of just the way we are? I mean, maybe we can't handle this. I mean, if you were to see, I mean, think about it. If all of a sudden, if you were brought onto a craft like some of these people have been, would your brain maybe shut down perhaps, and so you would forget all about it? It's possible. It's possible. I do believe that could be part of it, but I also believe that these aliens are doing something I don't know what. I don't know if it has anything to do with any of the injections that they give people. The injections could be just to calm people down before the medical procedure. And then maybe there's something else, some sort of post-hypnotic suggestion that's put into the subconscious mind, and then that makes people forget about it. Nobody really knows. David Jacobs talked about in his books that somehow they take these events and take them, instead of going into your short-term memory where they should be, they get stuffed back into your long-term memory and with a lock and key onto it. And it takes hypnosis to prod them back into your recollection. So we really don't know. It's all guesswork. It's all fascinating. And that's why we should have the entire scientific community looking into this phenomenon and studying this and trying to figure out what the hell exactly is going on. But of course, because of the stigma and all that kind of stuff for all these years, you only had a handful of people looking into this. But we need to start taking it more seriously. Just look at. I mean, you have a lot of people, a lot of first responders now, like as I was talking to start off this show, who are interested in it, who recognize that there is something going on here, and that they need to have policies and procedures in place to deal with UFOs. So people are starting to take it more seriously. Okay, one other thing I want to do here is I want to just go over some of the recent Spotify polls. We'll go over the last 3. Okay, for the episode, The Biggest UFO and Alien Story of 2024, I asked this question: of the choices below, which was your favorite UFO/alien story of 2024? There's 40 votes so far with 19 days left. Okay, let's see. One person, or 2.5%, say the Peru alien mummies. 3 people, or 7.5%, say Immaculate Constellation. That was a big story that we talked about before. Another 3 people, or 7.5%, say the Lou Elizondo and Tim Gallaudet testify before the House. That was a big story, of course. Another 3 people, or 7.5%, say Imminent. That was the release of Lou Elizondo's long-awaited book. That was another big story, of course, late in the year. 4 people, or 10%, say the Sean Kirkpatrick lying was the biggest story of 2024, their most favorite one. Let's see, 10 people, or 25%, say DroneGate. Of course, DroneGate's fresh in everyone's mind. And then the majority, which I'm very happy to see, 16 people, or 40%, say the Rotor Vegas revelations. Of course, I believe that is the biggest story not only of 2024, but it's the biggest story of all time. How could it not be when you should have absolute proof of an alien presence on Earth? How could that not be the biggest story of 2024, if not all time? It has to be the biggest story. Just because some people want to pretend it's not, that's not my problem. That's not my fault. That's their fault. That's their fault. If they can't open their eyes to this, and just think about it. Think about how's the public going to react? Yeah, you have to think about it. What's the public going to, how's the public, the people who don't understand this story and understand its significance, like how are they going to react to all these UFO personalities when they realize that the evidence has been out there and they just pretty much ignored it? I mean, how is, like, a lot of the people who are fans of all these other people in the UFO community, it's one thing, we already know the debunkers, they look like total absolute fools. They run away from it, like I stated in that video, like Count Dracula running away from a crucifix, right? They run away from it. But what about the other people in the UFO community? A lot of the bigger names, the fact that they don't address it, like what are people like just regular people with a casual interest, or even more than just a casual interest, people who are in the UFO community, it might not even be aware of how big this story really is, because the people they trust, right, aren't telling them about it. They aren't revealing to them that there's absolute proof now out there. We all hoping that the government finally tells the truth, but now, hey, we have absolute proof now, right? What are they going to say, like, in the future when it's revealed? Because it is going to be revealed. I mean, nothing's going to happen at some point where it was all a hoax. Like, nothing like that's going to happen. It is not going to happen, right? It's just not. So what are people in the UFO community who haven't been really paying attention to this because they're enthralled with and more interested in what the people they trust in the UFO community are telling them. But when they find out later on that, oh wow, that story was out there and he never said anything about this, or she never said anything about this, well, what are they going to think then? Yeah, you have to think about that. I'm thinking about it. because I'm sure I'll bring it up in the future. I'll bring it up right. I'll keep bringing it up. I'm going to keep bringing it up until it does get acknowledged, right? It needs to be acknowledged by the bigger names in the UFO world here. So people know that it's all over with now. Okay, getting back to this. For the episode, Cybertruck Bomber Blames China for Drones, Greer's latest UFO prediction, and Peru Mummies update, I asked this question: will Stephen Greer's UFO revelation come true? 34 votes so far. 8 people, or 23.5%, say yes, while 26 people, or 76.5%, say no. I say no. I don't believe in these predictions. I think it's just an effort to get attention. I think that these days I'm not a big Stephen Greer fan anymore. Early on, when I first was became interested in this, when I first heard about Stephen Greer, when he, back in 2000, late 90s, 2000, like during that period, I thought he was great. But these days, I don't know what he's up to. I don't know what he's doing. It seems like it's I don't know, money-making projects. That's what it seems like to me. That's just my opinion. It doesn't make me right. Actually, I just want to point out too, a lot of people, usually because of all of the positions I had in that show, I got a lot of, for the more so than usual, a lot of people didn't like some of the things I was stating. They didn't like that I didn't buy into the Cybertruck bomber right off the bat. All I'm saying is I have trouble believing someone who, blows himself up, kills himself, and blows themselves up in a truck. Or even like some people are saying he's not even him. That's not even him. He wasn't in the truck. Well, okay, then there was somebody else in the truck, and that means he killed somebody. Then he murdered somebody. See, okay, no matter which way you look at it, right? The guy's not in his right mind. Whether he committed suicide or whether he committed murder, the bottom line is he's not in his right mind. And and so I don't know if I just believe just something like this out of the, you hear it out of the clear blue sky. And for one thing, I don't believe that China's sending the drones over. I find that hard to believe. And I think we'll find out as time goes on that it has nothing to do with China. And then I also had people who were mad at me because there's some people that are fans of Stephen Greer, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then, of course, there were people mad at me over the Peru mummies. There's some people who think I'm missing the boat on that. I think the Peru mummies is a great story. I think it's very promising. There's just some little things that I think, little blanks that need to be filled here for me. That's all. I mean, I just think 2025 might be a bigger year for the Peru mummies. I think we'll get better reports, more reports. It has nothing to do with anything else, except I just think there's a couple of little blanks that need to be filled. Like, for instance, okay, we did have those dummies. Okay, that seemed to be something that everybody involved could say. They'll say there was those fake ones that people were trying to pass off as alien, right? And then all of a sudden, but then miraculously, a couple of years later, we have real ones. So what's the explanation for that? How come? Like, what made these fakers make these fake ones? I mean, who made the fake ones? That's the other thing. I mean, was it? There's a lot of different questions that are never really answered or never addressed. There's not even any speculation for the most part on it. I just think that we just need a little bit more time on it. And I think that's very promising. I think that they are. At this point, to me, they look like it's going to show that these things are aliens in the final analysis. So I don't understand that either. I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to wait for some more information. Some of the people who are connected to it, some of the bigger names connected to it, are like Josh McDowell, the attorney, who got his own father, who was a famous odontologist to look at them. He's very enthusiastic about it, but he still says that, we need to have more study on this. There's no final, from some of the scientists involved, there's no final explanation, there's no final report yet. So I think we're getting there, and I think it's turning out that these things are going to turn out to be unknowns. I think that's where we're heading. It's going to be unknown. That's what it looks like to me. And we'll see. But again, a lot of people were upset with me about that episode, and that's just the way it is sometimes. You can't please everyone all the time. That's the way things are. Okay, and then finally, for the episode Alien Bedroom Encounters Drone Orb Update / Fake UFO Videos, I asked this question: would you have known that the viral video of a crashed flying saucer in Arizona was fake the instant you saw it? 14 votes only so far with 25 days left. 3 people, or 21.4%, say no, while 11 people, or 78.6%, say yes. Yes. Well, I feel bad for the 3. I really do. Sorry. But yeah, that was obviously fake, as anyone who watched that previous show saw. So I don't know how anybody fell for it at all in the first place. So I don't know. There's no real reason to get too much into that more than I already did. So I'm just going to let that one go. Anyway, I just want to say this. I want to say thank you all for joining me today. Until next time.